I love fresh starts. The clean slates like birthdays and New Year's, but I also really like the idea that we can get up every morning and start over. Friday and Saturday this week were Rosh Hashanah, or the Jewish New Year. A week later, on the 30th, is Yom Kippur, the Jewish High Holy Days, described in English as the Day of Atonement. We, as Unitarian Universalists, cannot be said to observe these days of our own devising. Some of you may actually be Jewish. They are days for you to observe as you wish or don't wish. At the same time, in these days, the rest of us can notice important lessons about new beginnings and even do-overs. Yisroel Gick is a researcher and writer on aspects of Judaism. One thing that he points out is that although people are accustomed to thinking of Judaism as focused on divine reward and punishment, there is much more to it than that. Glick points out that Judaism, especially through the lens of mysticism, is very much about the spiritual outcomes caused by our own actions. Do you remember the $10 word used last week to describe the way that we achieve practice of Unitarian Universalism, not just through thinking right thoughts, but also by right actions? Those right actions are called orthopraxy. In that way, these two very different accesses to ethics and spirits, Unitarian Universalism and Judaism, express similar values. Glick puts it this way: every time we do something right, we fortify our soul and bring God into the world a little bit more, making the world a better place. When we do the opposite, we chip away at our soul and we weaken its connection to its source. And this, more than divine punishment, is the primary deterrent against doing something that we know is wrong. We can think of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur as times to be reminded that the opportunity to be forgiven is before us. But if the divine punishment is not the point, what else is there for us to notice? Indeed, one of the points of reflection is to consider the damage that we have caused to others. But we say that we are beyond self-flagellation and hair shirts. We say that we practice self-acceptance and acceptance of others. How does noticing the wisdom of Yom Kippur help? Glick offers the question this way: what good is forgiveness if the damage has already been done? To give context to the answer, I'm going to talk about dancing. In dance class, my teacher talks about the front body and the back body. She has students imagine that their back body faces in that direction and can be moved with just as much intention as the front of your body, or the way students are facing the front. In modern dance, students may be taught that their bodies orient to 3 positions relative to the room: front, middle, and back. In answer to our question, what good is forgiveness if the damage is done? Glick offers us an interesting orientation: the soul body and the soul. Can you imagine that there is a part of your soul that you carry with you into your daily life that feels and maybe hurts by the harm that may happen to you, and another part of you that is non-negotiable and untouchable in the face of your variables and sometimes challenging human life? Glick asserts that the soul can be damaged, that the soul, at its deepest core, is untouchable. In body and soul terms, the body of our soul can be hurt by our actions, but the soul of our soul remains flawless and pristine. Glick goes on to say that Yom Kippur has a soul as well, that calls us into the deeper meaning, that asks us to notice that although forgiveness of others and also ourselves, the chips and dings and scratches and damages that we accumulate on the body of our soul can be made new and fall away. It may be that you are not often presented with the opportunity to engage the soul of your soul. Yom Kippur is that moment. Glick explains that the soul of Yom Kippur is the portal in time that awakens the core of every soul to shine. bringing each of us to a place where the damage we've caused, all those little chips, simply do not exist, bringing each of us to a place where we can start afresh and move forward, joyfully and energetically. But what if a story that centers on the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob doesn't speak to you? Unitarian Universalism holds a space for you with the words from ancestor Ralph Waldo Emerson, the Oversoul. Let us learn the revelation of all nature and thought, that the highest dwells within us, that the sources of nature are in our own minds. As there is no screen or ceiling between our heads and the infinite heavens, so there is no bar or wall in the soul where the effect cease and God, the cause, begins. I am constrained every moment to acknowledge a higher origin for events than the will I call mine. There is a deep power in which we exist and whose beatitude is accessible to us. Every moment when the individual feels invaded by it is memorable. It comes to the lowly and simple. It comes to whoever will put off what is foreign and proud. It comes as insight. It comes as serenity and grandeur. What does Emerson mean here? In Glick's terms, he's talking about the connection of the soul of your soul to everything else. In more everyday terms, whether or not you believe in a God kind of person, there is a part of the story of being human that is about part of being something larger than your each and individual selves, something larger. Emerson states that the soul's health consists in the fullness of its reception. Reception of what? I suggest that one of the things that we must be receptive to is the network of relationships that keep us interconnected. The many, the few, and the each relationship among and between us matter. When we cause harm, either in the network of relationships or in an individual relationship that is our great good fortune to participate in and with, we are not only harming our own soul, we are also acting at cross purposes within the relationship that we have with the spirit that is larger than what we are. Emerson goes on to say that forever and ever the influx of this better and more universal self is new and unsearchable. With these words, Emerson demonstrates that the overlap in Unitarian Universalism with mystical Judaism, particularly that of the soul, the core of the being of humans, is something besides the object of the rejection and punishment of the vengeful God. He says that within us is the soul of the whole, the wise silence, the universal beauty to which every part and particle is equally related, the eternal one. You want to call that God, Emerson is saying? I don't always call the oneness of everything God, but you can if you like. When it breaks through our intellect, it is genius. When it breathes through our wills, it is virtue. When it flows through our affections, it is love. And in the way of the inexplicable, Emerson points out that the oneness that breathes and lives in everything, which everything I specifically design as the network of relationships represented by the connections among and between us, that everything is calling to you. It seeks to break through your intellect, the knowing of your mind that can recite multiplication tables by heart, the knowing that sits in your heart like a steel trap sprung shut, when you are right and everyone else is not just wrong, but is ridiculous. It seeks to soften your will, which has served you well as a survival strategy in the past, but will lead you astray as its unyieldingness when it comes to dealing with other human beings. When it flows through your affections, it is love. It is your way of blessing one another. Matthew Fox teaches a theology that many consider universalist. He defines blessing as relational. One does not bless without investing something of oneself to the receiver of one's blessing. And one does not receive blessing oblivious of its gracious giver. A blessing spiritually is a relating spirituality. And because that connectedness is the greater truth, and because it matters, I don't have to rehearse it for you to the minute detail of all the ways you have hurt others or have been hurt, either by mistake or by an intention, by acting before your anger cooled. Being harmed but also harming others is a universal experience. So we have taken this opportunity to notice the Jewish New Year, Rosh Hashanah, and the fresh start, spring cleaning at autumn, the turning over of a new leaf that can happen within us, because you carry within you that capacity to be a blessing. Take this opportunity to recall to whom you owe an apology. Take that time to mend a fence or build a bridge. Goodness, those are busy metaphors. What if all you need to do is say that you're sorry, promise to do better, and begin again? What if there is something lodged in your heart that you're pretty sure is unforgivable? I'm not here to tell you to change it. I want you to remember that you are wise about your own experience. For unforgivable things, the important work that you must do is forgive yourself. Give yourself tenderness and to support yourself. Yes, forgiveness work is important, but it exposes you to more harm. The poet Rilke reminds you to be patient toward all that is unsolved in your heart and to try to love the questions themselves, like locked rooms and like books that are now written in a very foreign tongue. Our heritage as Unitarian Universalists include a variety of expressions of that love. It calls you to do this work of mending relationships, of planning not to damage your relationships in the first place because you didn't turn to love and turn again to love. You are welcome here. You are welcome to express your love, and when you have made mistakes, you are welcome to begin again and to turn to love again. What is beyond right and wrong is repairing relationships and staying connected. Let us close with If You Knew by Ellen Glass. What if you knew you'd be the last to touch someone? If you were taking tickets, for example, at the theater, tearing them and giving back the ragged stubs, you might take care to touch that palm. Brush your fingertips along the lifeline's creases. When a man pulls his wheeled suitcase too slowly through the airport, when the car in front of me doesn't signal, when the clerk at the pharmacy won't say thank you, I don't remember that they're going to die. A friend told me she'd been with her aunt. They'd just had lunch, and the waiter, a young gay man with plum black eyes, joked as he served the coffee, kissed her aunt's powdered cheek when they left. Then they walked half a block, and her aunt dropped dead on the sidewalk. How does the dragon's splume have to come? How wide does the crack in heaven have to split? What would people look like if we could see them as they are, soaked in honey, stung and swollen, reckless, pinned against time?